Well, one day, Be'ezrat Hashem, hopefully we'll be able to say Happy Tisha B'Av. In the meantime, we are not. And as I pick at my beard for the past 3 weeks, it reminds me there was a famous Rebbe that said, Jew, Jew, where is your beard? But the truth of the matter is, a lot of people, we can say, beard, beard, where's the Jew? You know, beard, beard, where's the Jew? And I'm picking up my beard thinking to myself, all I care is for tomorrow afternoon when I can shave. That's it. And it's really annoying. I mean, it reminds me that I do come from great neck, and the back of my neck is now connecting to the bottom of my beard, so it really means I have some Sephardi in me, but like ultimately, there's a certain element of, I can't wait for that. But that means I'm ignoring what is supposed to be in the moment now. There were these two kids, a little bit rambunctious, an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old, and there was a Rav that came to town, and the mother said, you know what, go talk to this rabbi about your feeling of emunah and belief in God. So these two kids come to the rabbi, and one of the kids goes in, and the rabbi says, son, where is God? And he doesn't flinch, doesn't move, doesn't respond. And the rabbi says again, son, where is God? And he doesn't respond. Says, finally, maybe the kid is hard of hearing. Son, where is God? And the child bolts out, and his brother sees him outside, and he's like, what's going on? Why are you running out of there? He's like, I don't know, but God is missing, and they think we did it. Right? On so many levels, God is missing, and the truth of the matter is, we did do it. Listen to this Gemara. The Gemara says, Alma Avda Haaretz. Why are us Jews getting destroyed? And the truth of the matter is, destroyed is not the correct translation, because we're never destroyed. But why do we have so many calamities that befall us? And the Gemara answers, Al shalo berchu batorah techila. Because we didn't make Birkat HaTorah. We didn't make the bracha over the Torah. All right, simple explanation. Give a little bit of a homiletical explanation. Shelo berchu b'Torah techila means we didn't prioritize Torah. You know what we prioritize? Whatever is in the fad, whatever is the going, whatever is exciting for me. What's exciting for me? Typically, it will be depicted by billboards or ads, but is it depicted by something that's 3,000 years old that's just as viable as it was then today? Or is it as viable as it today as it was then? The Torah, shelo berchu b'Torah techila, means we didn't give precedence to that which the Torah says is important. We come up with other things. Now we're going to need the iPhone 17 or the 26, whatever they'll name it. Or we're going to need the next set of AirPods. And all of these things, if I don't have it, then I am a nothing, or it loses my sense of self, or I lose my sense of self. Shelo berchu b'Torah techila means, what does the Torah deem important? Listen to this. There was a guy who was a doctor at a conference in Eretz Yisrael, and it was a conference for epilepsy. And he's a prestigious doctor from Minneapolis, and he sees a Yerushalmi Jew, a little bit out of place, who is sitting there diligently taking notes at this conference in Jerusalem. And this doctor from Minneapolis goes over to the Yerushalmi Jew during one of the breaks and says, so are you a doctor as well? You know, what brings you here? He says, no, but anytime they have these conferences, I like to come to them because one of my daughters has epilepsy, he says. And I like to get, you know, the up on the times and see what and how I can improve her life in order to make it, you know, much more successful for the future. So this guy from Minneapolis was, you know, quite blown away that is what, you know, how much the father goes out to help his daughter. Every epilepsy conference that comes through, which there are, you know, a fair share of them, he would go and take notes. The conference is ending, and the Yerushalmi Jew turns to the doctor and says, can I ask you a question? Do you have a place to eat for Shabbos night? And the doctor said, actually, I don't. He said, would you want to come to our house? He said, I'd love to do that. So the doctor comes, a little bit out of place, but comes to the Yerushalmi guy's house, And he has 5 daughters and 3 sons. And he says, I'm not going to tell you which one of the daughters has epilepsy. I'm going to love to know if you would be able to figure it out. And the night goes on, and the Suda was beautiful, and the doctor is getting up to leave, and the Yerushalmi fellow says to him, do you know which one is the one that has epilepsy? And the doctor says, yes, I do. And he points to the particular girl. And the Yerushalmi guy is taken aback, because he's so good, and she is so good at being able to mask it. He said, how did you know? How did you know that that's the one that has epilepsy? Nobody could tell. He said, for one reason, because when you were giving the brachot to your children, you spent more time with her, right? What's important is where we spend more time with the brachot. What's important is where we spend more time investing and energy. And the question is, how much importance do we have for the Torah? Everybody that's here today is an amazing thing. We could have been lying in a horizontal stronghold. Now that we can sit on chairs, we could have been, playing some game or watching something, but yet you're here because there's back-to-back shiurim. There's nothing more beautiful that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could ask for. In a day that the destruction of the Churban occurred, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees that people in the middle of Los Angeles are listening to back-to-back classes with no coffee break. That's unbelievable. It was Erev Yom Kippur in 1947. The Klosenberger Rebbe was getting ready to lead the service for Jews in the DP camps. And as he's preparing, a girl knocks on his door and says, Rebbe, my father was killed in Auschwitz, and I normally used to get brachot on Erev Yom Kippur from my father, and nobody is there to give me a bracha. So the Klosenberger Rebbe says, I'll be your father. And he gives her the bracha. And he goes back to doing his preparations before Yom Kippur when he gets another knock on the door. And it was another child that says, Rebbe, I need you to give me a bracha. I don't have any parents to give me the bracha. He gave 87 brachot that Erev Yom Kippur. And he said that was the greatest form of preparation for Yom Kippur, because he was thinking, what is the need of Klal Yisrael? That's Berchu B'Torah Techila. That is putting Torah as a priority. What is the need? What is the need in the moment? What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want from me? Right? The pasuk says in Echa, Al Eile Ani Boichia. On these my eyes cry. Al Eile Ani Boichia. I cry over these. Right? But then it says, for this, Al Zed Dava Libenu. On this my heart cries. Wait, on all of these my eyes tear, but on this my heart cries. Does the eyes see more than the heart? How does that work exactly? So there is a famous mashal or maisa with the Chavetz Chaim, told it to Rav Gifter, and he said, this is the connection to the Churban. You have a kid, you have a father, not necessarily so well off. He decides, I'm going to go buy a lottery ticket. And he saves up whatever it was, very, very poor family, was able to buy a certain lottery ticket. And he said, look, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you want to make me wealthy, here you go, here's your opportunity. And he takes the lottery ticket, and he goes home, and he says to his wife, do me a favor, guard this lottery ticket. I have such a good feeling about this one. Fine. The father leaves, and the mother's taking care of the kids, and one of the babies are crying, and the mother sees this lottery ticket. It's so colorful, and the baby starts to play with the lottery ticket, and the baby stops to cry. And then, all of a sudden, the baby starts crying again. What happened to the lottery ticket? It got thrown into the fireplace and burnt up. So the baby's crying. Then the mother is crying, and then the other sister comes in and she starts crying. And then the father comes home after seeing that the numbers that he had picked on those lottery tickets are the winning numbers. He comes home and he realizes what happens and he starts to cry. So the Chavetz Chaim said, the baby's crying because it was a colorful ticket. The mother has more information and is crying because she let her husband down. The sister is crying because they were crying, but only the father knows the potential of what that ticket held. That's why he was crying. Al eila ani baichia, on these my eyes cry. We cry for such stupid. Think of all the things that made us cry, all of the tragedies, supposed tragedies, and then you look back and it's like, I feel like such a dork, I cried because of that. But really, there is only one reason we should be crying. What does the heart say? What does the regesh say? What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu say we should be crying for? The real pain, any pain we have, emanates from one point, and that is the Churban. The Meiri says, Kol HaMitavel al Yerushalayim zoiche v'reya b'simchasa. Anybody who mourns over Yerushalayim, the Gemara says, you'll be privileged and merit to see in its beauty and its grandeur. The Meiri says, what is this mourning? We don't have any mourning. We'll go right outside, back to our air conditioning, from air conditioning, and then eventually be able to eat this evening. He says, you know what the mitabel is the regesh, is the feeling. Where is that feeling? We have to bring back that feeling. Listen to this story, crazy story. There was this mother who unfortunately was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and within days she was going to be nifteres. She was already sick for a while. This was right before Rosh Hashanah. And her son's bar mitzvah was going to be the week after Rosh Hashanah. And she felt she wasn't going to be there for it. So she said to her son, you know what, why don't you go, put on your bar mitzvah suit, come, I want to see you one last time. I want to see you standing in this beautiful new suit. And the son goes, puts it on for the first time, never wore it before, and he's wearing it, and he's standing there so proud, and then they start to cry. The mother's crying, and the son is crying, and then they embrace and they hug each other. And the boy walks out. And the mother's friend who was watching this said, if you don't mind me asking, isn't that like a little selfish? What were you doing there? You're asking your son to put on his bar mitzvah suit? Like, really, that's the right thing to do because you wanted to see him in the suit? So the mother says, no, that's not why I asked him to put on the suit. I wanted him to put on the suit because I know I'm going to die. And I know I won't be there at his bar mitzvah. And the halacha is a person who is in avelut for a parent cannot have new clothing for a whole year. I wanted him to wear this suit so that it wouldn't be considered new for his bar mitzvah. That was the sensitivity the mother had for the child. That is what she had in mind. This is the headspace we have to get into of what would HaKadosh Baruch Hu say? What would Hashem want from me? A lot of times we do a chesed in our minds, but really, as Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky used to say, that's not a chesed, that's a chayte. You're a chesed? That's a sin. What's the chesed? Every night, your wife has, or whatever the case is, has food on the table. And it's hot, and you come home every night. You call your wife and you say, listen, sweetheart, I'm not going to be home on time tonight. I'll be home a little bit later. And what do? You do a chesed. You're taking an old friend to the airport. He needed a ride. Is that a chesed? You come home 2 hours later because you wanted to spend time with a guy that now your kids are cranky, your wife's annoyed, the food is cold, right? That's a chesed? That's not a chesed, that's a chayte. We make so many decisions a day. How many decisions do you think we make a day? And I'm talking about silly ones. Like, how many decisions? So the number is around 35,000 decisions a day. Do we go this? Do we go that? What do we put on? What do we not put on? Do I go faster? Do I go slower? Should I make a right? Should I make a left? About 35,000 decisions a day. And not all of them are going to be right. And some of them are stupid, right? But ultimately, the question is, if the majority of the decisions can be Berchu b'Torah techila, that I am utilizing what would Hashem want as my barometer of my decision making, there is nothing greater that I can do than actually making a decision based on that. The Hebrew word Yisrael stands for Yesh Shishim Ribo Otiot La Torah. There are 600,000 letters in the Torah. Every Jew has a letter. Yisrael stands for, there are 600,000 otiyot la Torah, one representing each and every neshama that's out there. Now, we know the famous Rav Nachman of Breslov line. The day you were born was the day that Hashem said the world cannot exist without you. Right? The Torah itself is the definition of how important you are, because there is a letter that you yourself have in the Torah. So one of the Gedolim, I forget who it is, said there are three things you can learn from that. Number one, what is the halacha if there is a letter missing in the Torah? The Torah is invalidated, it's pasul. That means you are needed. Right? If your letter is not there, if any letter is not there, the whole Torah is pasul. Really? There's 599,999 other letters. One is going to make the difference. The answer is you are in chashav. You're important. There is my wife was working with somebody who has 13 children. And as they were coming onto a city bus once, so the bus driver, and I think 7 of them, the bus driver says to the mother, says, why don't you leave some at home? She's like, I did. Anyway, but like one of the things somebody once said to the mother as well, said, why do you have so many kids? And she said, and which one would you like me to get rid of? Each one is important. One letter invalidates the whole Torah. What's another halacha? 2 letters, halachically, if they overlap one another, it invalidates the Torah. It's pasul. Because everybody has a purpose. Every single person has their own role. It's a very own and unique role that no 2 people will ever overlap one another. We always get nervous. Oh, what if that guy finds out my proprietary information? Maybe he'll steal that from me. Maybe they'll undermine me. Maybe they'll be able to get, the property if I don't put this deal forth ASAP right before Shabbos, where everything else is going crazy in the house. I got to deal with it right now. Nothing's going to happen. Nobody's going to overlap anybody else. And what's the third one? The Torah, the Torah has no word in it that's only 1 letter. There is no word in Hebrew that's only 1 letter. In English, we have the word I. You know why the word I is only 1 letter? Because you want to be alone? Go for it. In Torah, there is no person that can be alone. We need each other. We always need someone else. The Medrash says like this, okay? Vayar elihim es ha'adam ki tov ma'od. The Medrash says ma'od ze adam. What does that mean? Hashem created the person and it was good, and ma'od, it was very good. The letters mem, aleph, dalid also spells adam. Why? So let me ask you a question. Can everybody raise their hand 1 second? Just raise your hand. Okay? Now raise it higher. There is nobody that can't ever raise it higher from the first moment you raise it. I've asked that question a lot of times. There is always more. There is so much greater potential. The Midrash says, Adam zu ma'od, because there is more. Our potential is unbelievable. The Tzidkas HaTzadik says, there are 3 relationships. The relationship of us and Hashem, the relationship of us and others, but the most difficult relationship and the one that gets neglected is the relationship between us and ourselves. We don't believe in ourselves enough. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I believe in you. I created you. When we wake up in the morning, Maida'ani, the first thing we say, Rabba emunasecha, Hashem says, I'm your greatest cheerleader. I'm your biggest fan. Because if you are alive, then the world cannot exist without you. If you're dead, then obviously the world can. But we're all alive. Some of us are, maybe sometimes walk the life of the walking dead, but ultimately, we have a purpose. We have to know how to tap into it. There was a doctor. A lot of times, if you ever see, the doctor shows or the reality of doctors, they'll give up. I mean, there'll be a point where it's just like, Ad Kan, I can't continue trying to revive this person. It's as if you're just reviving a dead person. What am I doing? I'm beating a dead horse. So there was a certain doctor, his name is Dr. Leibowitz, and he was interning at a certain hospital, and there was a woman had a massive heart attack in the lobby. All the doctors came down there, and he is there pushing away, and as the time goes on, so do the doctors, move away, and he continues. And then he has the defibrillator, and he does one last one, and all of a sudden, they saw on the heart monitor a little bit of an increase, and she came back to life. He literally brought her back to life. She went up to the ICU, and he moved on with his day. But, it was 4 p.m., and at 10 p.m., he said, you know what, I'd love to go check in on her. He goes upstairs, goes to check in, and all of a sudden there was a guy sitting on this lady's bed and says, that's him! That's the guy! And he's like, whoa. And their last name is Kelly, some Irish Catholic. His last name is Leibowitz, obviously Jewish. He figured he'll make a Kiddush Hashem. And the guy, the husband says, that's the guy who saved your life. That's the guy. And the lady looks at him and says, I can't say thank you for that. Thank you doesn't mean anything. But you know how I can thank you? Is when I go home and I see my kids and I see my grandkids, I'll always remember you. That's a real thanks. That's a thanks that comes from within. What is the Hebrew word for thanks? Todah. But it also comes from the word modeh. Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch said that real thanks is admitting I couldn't have done it without you. How often do we give a thanks? You know what our thanks are? We're on the phone, checking out at the cash register because for whatever reason we were too lazy to do our own self-checkout. And Stacy, because it's written over there, says, do you want any bags? Okay, and we're still on the phone, and then she finishes, and we go like that. We give her a courtesy pinky. Thank you. And maybe like a little bit of an up eyebrow. That could be our thanks. Wait a second. We were too lazy to do it on our own. Stacy took care of us. Yes, it's her job, but she packed it for us. She put everything through that scanner. Sometimes that could be annoying, and she fulfilled the transaction, and that's all I give her is a little pinky. What type of chutzpah is that? True thanks is admitting I couldn't have done it without you. So you know what? Guess what? Don't be on the phone when you go to the cash register. So you can actually be grateful. You can actually give thanks. The whole concept of thanks is where it comes from a real place of recognizing I couldn't have done it without you because we're part of a big unit. By the way, the Hebrew word besimcha is also the word machshava. It means thought. To be with happiness means you got to think a little bit. Think, what makes us happy, right? Happiness is a state of mind. It's totally up to us to be happy. I always tell people I'm pro-choice. I choose to be happy, right? That's what is up to us. A conceptual mind frame is all bisimcha. But yet we mope and we're sad. It says, Ivdu es Hashem bisimcha, boyu lefanav birnana. What is boyu lefanav birnana? It's Roshei Tevos belev, with your heart. It's all a matter of making my heart and my mind one and recognizing, wait a second, let me just make the call and choose to be happy today. Here's a very interesting idea. It doesn't say in the Gemara on Chodesh Av, you're supposed to be sad. It doesn't say be sad. This is not a sad month. It says limit your happiness. But as a Jew, we're always happy. We can't not be happy, right? That's not living. Besimcha is how we live. Ivdu es Hashem besimcha. We live in a state of happiness. Limit it a little bit on Av. You're going to have 2 shots, have 1. You're going to have 8, have 7. Like whatever it is. But just make sure that we never live a life that doesn't have happiness. That's not living. There was I always, when we would travel, I always tell my kids to make a Kiddush Hashem moment. What's making a Kiddush Hashem moment? There is no parav in the Goyish world. Nothing parav. There is meat and milk. Nothing parav. Parav is the thing that husbands mess up. It happens to be that parav is now a Spanish word. You have carne, leche, and parav. At least that's what my cleaning lady says. So parav is a Spanish word. But what is parav? There is no parav. You're either going to make a chilul Hashem or you're going to make a kiddush Hashem. So anytime we traveled, it was either one or the other. There's no man's land, right? We were going through Frankfurt airport once, and one of the security guards, obviously my son, he was 4 at the time, he was a real threat. And like you looked at him, he looked like a terrorist. I mean, like there was no doubt he probably was fully laden with some bomb. So the security guard went like this. And my son went over to him and gave him a hug. You know, because what does this mean in the 4-year-old life? This means, give me a hug. Even in Germany, they laughed. Right? Even in Germany. And even though we were Jewish, they laughed. You know, that's making a Kiddush Hashem. Because that shows, that's the type of warmth he has from the house. You know, this means hug. It doesn't mean come here, I'm going to spank the heck out of you. That's not what it means. Right? There was a certain rabbi that was a teacher in one of the schools, and the way he would have the kids improve is he would have a bad list on the board. Whatever the mahalech was, that's what he would do. So he would put the bad list, and any kid that got on that list, you know, knew that they have to improve for the rest of the day, and it motivated them. And as they improved, he would erase the name, and all was great. There was an uninvited guest known as the principal who came in one day. And this was something that he had with his class, but he didn't want the principal to see that. So as the principal came in, this rabbi made his way to the blackboard and leaned up like this with the back of his jacket and started rubbing off the chalk from the blackboard so that nobody should be embarrassed from something that he implemented within his classroom, not that it was going to get out. And after the principal left, he had this white stain on the back of his jacket because he wanted to make sure that, you know, that wasn't meant to go out. I didn't want to embarrass anybody. And the kids were really impacted by it. The kids who were in that class said, it made such an impression on me that he recognized what is the lave, what is necessary, that sensitivity of not embarrassing anybody. There is a famous story of the guy who invited a 4th grade Rebbe to his Sheva brachas. And the Chatan gets up at the Sheva brachot, and he says, I'm sure you're wondering why I invited my 4th grade Rebbe. He says, I'll tell you. He said, I'm only here today because of him. He said, when we were in 4th grade, one of the kids in the class bought a beautiful watch to school. It was gorgeous. One of the wealthier children had just gotten a birthday present. It was gorgeous. We all wanted it. And we went out to play for recess, and the kid left the watch on his desk. And I decided, okay, let me just take it. And I took it, and I put it in my pocket, and we all came back from recess, and the kid said, where's my watch? And the Rebbe gets up and says, look, everybody line up against the wall. And we're all lining up against the wall, and the Rebbe goes and puts his hand in the first kid's pocket, and then the next one, and I was number 7, and I was going to be so nailed. And he's 6, he's up to the 6th kid, and now he's up to the 7th kid, and he puts his hand in my pocket, and I'm like, and he goes on to the 8th kid, and to the 9th kid, and to the 10th kid, and he said, you know who you are? Enough said. That changed my life forever. He did not call me out. And he said, because of that Rebbe, I am here today. That's why I invited him. The sensitivity, the regesh, the lave, the heart. It's unbelievable. But we tend to think in our own world. You know, we're in our own mind all the time. It's all about the I, even though there is no 1-letter word in the Torah. It's all about the we. It's all about the anachnu. But really, I only think about the I for the most part. There was a kid who got kicked out of a school. And it was a disaster. And they didn't want to, they didn't know what to do, but they had to kick him out. And about 4 years later, the principal of that school, who had bothered a lot, saw this kid steiging away in a Beit Midrash, learning by himself in the corner during Bein Hazmanim, during the days between the Zman. It didn't make sense during vacation. He's sitting there and learning, and the principal goes over to him and says, I can't believe you're from. I can't believe you're still here. I can't believe you're sitting and learning on your own during vacation. And the boy said, yes, Rebbe so-and-so would call me every Friday after I get kicked out. It's like, wow, that's amazing. Principal goes back to the school and he calls in Rebbe so-and-so and he says, I can't believe you called him every week. You should see what he's doing. The Rebbe starts to cry. And he says, seriously? He said, I called him every week, but he never answered. He never answered. But I still called week after week after week to see if I can get through. And apparently it did. We never know what our actions, when we're concerned about other people, what type of impact they make. When we take out the I and we recognize the we, when we realize that a Sefer Torah, it's only all of the letters together, and Yisrael is Yeshishim Ribu Otiot La Torah, there is 600,000 letters, and only all of them together combined create a Torah scroll. It's incumbent upon us to take into consideration other people. The Chafetz Chaim writes, he says you should do one chesed a day that you don't tell anyone. One chesed a day. Just jot it down. I'm going to end with this story. Reb Chaim Kanievsky went into a lulav store. And the proprietor shows him one lulav, and shows him another one, and then shows him a third one. And Reb Chaim, after 5 minutes, buys that third lulav and leaves. And Reb Chaim's son-in-law says to him, I don't get it. There are so many people that it takes hours to find a lulav. You walk into a store, 3 minutes later, you're out with a lulav? And he says, let me show you something. They come back to his house, and on his table are 25 lulavim. Why? He said, I know people are going to go and say, if Reb Chaim didn't buy from them, I'm not going there. So I buy a lulav from every store I ever walk into. And then I spend 3 hours figuring out which one I'm going to keep. Because otherwise, it's going to ruin that guy's business, and it's going to ruin that potential, business. I don't want to do that. In life, the question is, are we taking into consideration only ourselves, or do we think about the other? One of the reasons for the Churban Abayis is Shalai Berchu B'Torah Techila. We didn't prioritize HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Be'ezrat Hashem, by prioritizing what is important in the Torah, what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want from me, may we not have to stand here next year giving speeches about what was, but we can actually appreciate the grandeur of what is.